in this next section, we're going to be solving the system of equations using a graph. That sounds real fancy. All we're doing is we're graphing two lines on the same graph. So let's go ahead and start with this first example. If we take this equation here, we have a y-intercept of 3. So I'm going to start up my y-axis of 3 at 3. From there I have a slope of 5/3, so I'm going to go a rise of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a run of 3. So my point is going to be somewhere up here. I can continue that trend going backwards by going back 3, down 5, down to here. I always like to graph that first one right away, even if it's off the graph, because it helps me make sure that I'm doing it in a straight line. Then counting backwards isn't so bad. So that's my first line. My second line down here, already solved for y, ready to go. I have a y-intercept of -1. So I'm going to start here at -1. And I have a slope of 1/3, meaning that I go up 1 over 3. And as you do this, what you're going to find is it's really important to draw very straight lines. You might even want to count down 1, back 3, just to make sure you got those points right. Because where they cross will determine the solution, and you don't want to be too far off because you're drawing sloppy lines. So I see where those two lines intersect. I'm going to draw a circle around that to remind myself that that is in fact the solution. And that I got by going 1, 2, 3 back and 2 down. So I'm going to say my solution is -3, -2. Slide over to the next example here. Y is not alone. So in that top one, we need to go ahead and figure out what we need to do to isolate y. We have a plus a -2y. I always like to write that right away. That reminds me that I have a positive 3x and I need to add a -3x to both sides. And when I add a -3x to the positive 3x, that goes to 0 over on the left. And the last step is I need to divide everything by the thing that's being multiplied by y, and that happens to be a -2. So if I were to rewrite this out here where I have a little bit more room, I divide everything by -2. Then we have y equals +4. Negative divided by -2 is +4. And then I have a -3 over -2, so I'm going to say plus 3x over 2. So that's one equation. And if we were going to graph that, my y-intercept is always the number that doesn't have the x term by it. So in this case, the constant 4. The 3/2 slope says go up 1, 2, 3 over 2. And that is the general trend. I might want to just confirm that by going down 3 and backwards 2, just to make sure I've got this line drawn well. And now we move on to the next line. We have this one down here. Same basic principles. We're going to add a -3x to both sides. And we're going to make that plus and minus. So I have a -3x and a positive 3x. That reduced down to 0. And that leaves me with -2y equals 8 plus a -3x. When I divide everything by -2, I get y equals 8 divided by -2 is -4. And then they're the same amount of 3x over 2. You just reduce the two negatives into a positive. So very similar to before, my y-intercept is my constant term without the x in it, so that's going to be -4. My slope is +3 over 2, so I end up with a line that looks something like this. And what you notice right away is these two lines are parallel. They actually both have a slope of 3/2, which is why they will in fact never cross. So there's no solution. You want to say something that when it asks you to solve it and you can't, you want to say no solution.